you are not stuck. You are afraid of what letting go will change. And right now, the stuckness feels like a problem. You should solve something wrong with you that needs fixing when what is really here is a rupture in attention. A small inner alarm goes off every time you try to look clearly at yourself. You want certainty, or you want relief, or you want a map that tells you exactly what to do. But the tension beneath all that wanting is older than any single thought. The fear that if you stop managing yourself, you'll discover you don't know who you are. The irony is gentle, but it's real. Classical Greek philosophy often gets treated like a set of rules, a checklist for becoming a better person. Yet that is not how it works at its most alive. Ask yourself something quietly sharp. When you read those ideas, do you feel attention widening or do you feel pressure tightening? Do the concepts help you see more or do they demand that you perform more perfectly? If your body tightens as you try to apply a philosophy, you are not practicing philosophy. You are auditioning for approval, either from others or from your own inner judge. Let us name the rupture more precisely. There's a moment when you become aware of yourself, your anger, your longing, your numbness, and part of you immediately tries to negotiate with it. You bargain. Be different, be quieter, be more justified. That negotiation is exhausting because it treats feeling as an enemy or a threat. But feeling is data. Greek thinkers begin there, not with commands, but with observation. What is present in you right now when no one is watching? What story is your mind trying to secure so it can feel safe? What part of you is insisting, I need to be understood? And what part is afraid that if you are truly seen, you will fall apart? When Socrates is described as asking questions, it is tempting to imagine debate, but the deeper movement is inward. The questions are like a mirror you keep close until your certainty loosens and your attention steadies. What do you actually know in the way that you can live from it rather than just repeat it? When you say you want peace, what do you do in the next 5 seconds that contradicts that desire? Notice how philosophy begins by noticing what you avoid noticing. It is not about becoming flawless. It is about becoming honest enough to see your patterns without flinching. So how to do Greek philosophy starts where you already are, with the lived texture of your moment. Not with an ideal self, not with a verdict, just with your experience as it arrives. A thought appears, a body sensation answers, an impulse reaches for control. Then the practice begins again, this time with attention instead of reaction. You don't have to force yourself into calm. You only have to watch how calm is being demanded, how fear is being dressed up as reason, how ego tries to stay intact by controlling the meaning of everything. There is a doorway here. When you stop treating philosophy as a rulebook, it becomes training in perception, learning to hold what is real without turning it into a battle. What if the right way isn't a set of behaviors, but a clearer stance toward your own inner life, one that can tolerate the moment before it scrambles into a plan? Keep that question close, because the next step depends on what you do with what you feel when no solution is offered yet. 3. When you sit down to practice, your mind may immediately start negotiating, as if it is protecting you from something. You feel a question arise, what do I believe? What do I really experience? And your ego answers with a faster story. Not because the story is false, but because it is loyal. Loyal to your identity as someone who should know, someone who should be consistent, someone who shouldn't be embarrassed by not knowing. So let us interrogate that loyalty gently. What does your mind do the moment you ask a question? Does it offer clarity or does it offer urgency? Does it try to solve you or does it try to control the meaning of what is happening? If you notice yourself reaching for an explanation right away, ask, what are you afraid would be true if you slowed down? What loss are you trying to prevent by getting an answer before you've looked? Here's the irony phase. Your first assumption might be that attention means focusing harder. But what if harder focus is often just agitation wearing a calm face? What if the mind talks back because it can't tolerate uncertainty? Not because it is thinking wrongly? When you try to be rational, do you become more open or more defended? You can test it in micro moments. The thought appears. You tighten. The story arrives. You feel relief. Then ask yourself, relief from what? Classical Socratic attention doesn't chase comfort. It separates belief from experience. A belief is what you say you are. An experience is what is actually here. Sensations, pacing of breath, the texture of tension in your chest, the heat of irritation. The quiet contraction of avoidance. You don't have to argue with the feeling. You only have to observe how quickly your mind converts it into identity. I am anxious becomes something is wrong with me, becomes I must fix this now. Try this as a living question, not a technique. When you label an emotion, what part of you gets protected by that label? If you remove the label, what remains? A soundless pressure, a readiness to escape, a desire to be seen as capable. There's usually a hidden attachment to being coherent. Camus put it sharply. The struggle is not only that the world is unclear, but that we cannot bear the gap between our longing and our knowledge. The Socratic move is to stay in that gap long enough to see what your ego is doing there. As you keep asking, your attention begins to sound less like a command and more like a relationship. You become curious about the mind's tactics. Rationalization, self-justification, catastrophizing, even the subtle craving to be good at philosophy. And you start noticing that the mind doesn't just think. It performs. It maintains an internal character. The question then becomes, which parts of your inner life are you, and which parts are strategies that once helped you survive? So when a thought claims authority, Dante immediately refute it. Ask how it earned your belief. What in your experience made it persuasive? Where do you feel it in the body? What do you get if you follow it for the next 5 seconds? If it is an identity shield, you will sense the cost. If it is true, you will sense steadiness without tightening. This is not moral perfection, it's discrimination. And now the practice can turn inward in a very specific way. Imagine your mind as a conversational partner that is usually correct about one thing only. It wants to keep you safe. Then ask, without accusation, safe from what? The answer will reveal what you've mistaken for reality. Keep that question close, because the next moment your feeling arrives will either be turned into a verdict or allowed to be just what it is, waiting for your attention to catch up. When you begin asking what a thought is trying to protect you from, virtue starts to look less like a standard you fail and more like a stabilizing relationship. Aristotle would recognize that move. In his world, character isn't a slogan. It's a habit of perception and response built over time, until your reactions feel almost inevitable. But what feels inevitable is often only repeated. You didn't choose it once and then keep choosing it. You kept reenacting a pattern until it became your default self. So let us look at what you repeat when no one is watching, including you. You repeat interpretations. You repeat emotional forecasts. You repeat the same internal voice that decides whether something is safe, whether you are adequate, whether you can relax. Even when you don't want to, your mind loops. Tension rises, a threat story forms, then relief arrives only after the story is secured. That relief is the attachment, not to a person necessarily, but to a predictable inner feeling certainty, usefulness, being right, being worthy. Here's the irony that matters. Your ego will often call this virtue. It will say, I am just being responsible, I am just being realistic, I am just being disciplined. But discipline without gentleness is often just fear wearing a tie. Ask yourself something simple and precise. What do I become when I repeat this pattern? More defended? More rehearsed? More numb maybe, or more performing? If the answer is that you become smaller, then the pattern is not training you in virtue. It's narrowing your life so you can manage anxiety. In Greek philosophy, virtue is a way of living that makes you more able to meet reality. Not because reality becomes kinder, but because you become steadier in how you relate to it. That means your emotional patterns aren't random weather. They are responses learned through attachment. If your nervous system learned, I am safest when I anticipate rejection, then your good character might secretly mean staying vigilant. You call it wisdom. Your body calls it survival. Try to listen for the specific habit your mind wants to keep. Is it the urge to control, to intellectualize, to apologize before anyone asks, to catastrophize and then feel relieved you were prepared? These are strategies with a biography. They were adaptive at some point. The therapeutic question is not whether they were wrong. It's whether they were still serving life or only guarding an older wound. Now you can reframe the word virtue into something workable. Not moral perfection, not self-improvement as punishment, but consistency in how you return. Consistency in how you come back to the present when you get pulled into the loop. That return is relational. It says, I will not abandon you to the mind's drama. And in that small refusal, you begin to feel a different kind of strength, steadiness without tightening. So when the next thought arrives with authority, you don't argue with it. You meet it the way you meet a habitual companion, curious, not cruel, Where is it located in your body? What does it ask you to do in the next 5 seconds? What identity does it offer in exchange for your compliance? If it offers relief by shrinking your honesty, you're not choosing virtue, you're choosing the loop. If it offers steadiness by widening your perception, you re-practicing character. This is what makes classical virtue therapeutic. It is not about being better than you are. It's about training attention and desire so they can stay aligned with reality instead of with fear. Keep asking gently what you repeatedly choose when you think you're only thinking, and notice what changes in you when you see the pattern clearly, even before you try to fix anything. The next part begins with the moment you realize that the loop isn't to your whole. Self-it as a relationship you can renegotiate. The core move in classical Greek philosophy is simple, and it is harder than it sounds. Treat the mind as loop as a habit-driven relationship, not a verdict on your character. Each time you practice returning curiously, consistently you train attention and desire to align with reality instead of fear. You're not trying to eliminate thoughts. You're learning how to meet them without abandoning yourself to them. If you want the next step, pick one moment today when the loop starts and ask, what return would kindness make possible? Then write one sentence about what you notice before you